Hey folks, welcome to the show today. Got some words of wisdom that were put out by Colonel X. Look back in my shows, you'll see when I interviewed Colonel X. He was my first mentor and a hell fellow well met. So with that being said, this totally wraps around the show today, and you'll see why. I will get to Tim Pool and stuff, but I have certain things I want to hit on because I do not want this to be a news show. I do a news show on WPRPN, World Pirate Radio Podcast Network, on Tuesday nights. That's where that will live. But this is kind of news, but it's also something to inform. The process of change is not new. The process of simultaneous change is not new. The process of mass communications is not new. The process of instantaneous mass communications is not new. But the process of instant change via communications is fairly new. This is what is disconcerting because it's not what we are as a species. It's used to, that this species is used to. This process is what is so disorienting in our global culture and to the individual. Adapt or die. The rate of, what he meant by that, the rate of change has shifted into another gear. Now the rate of change has accelerated due to the intersection of all these processes. Rate of change, instantaneous mass communications. The result is a sum of the parts is greater than the whole situation. And that was his end point. And this is from Colonel X. Go back and re-listen to why he is a mentor of mine. Very intelligent gentleman. I think you all enjoy that. Now, I'm going to go into something that's very relevant. Hey, Mr. A, how's it going, brother? Baz, how's it going, man? I will be doing a show with brothers of mine in my line of work. I have 2 upcoming, hopefully more, because that's really where I want to focus on men becoming better men, with me talking with other men, and all of us able to communicate and let you know our philosophies. And we may have differing philosophies, but now I'm going to get into something. With what I just read from him, here's something about the way words change. If you look up filibuster, most of you are thinking what the common parlance of that is. An action such as prolonged speech that obstructs progress in the legislative assembly while not technically contravening the required procedures. Okay, first off, how do you get there from the actual historical definition? And if you want to look up a past show of mine, I'm lucky I now have a body of work that I can refer you to if you want to look at it. I did a show where I went in depth on William Walker, and he was called a filibuster. And this is the historical and correct term. It's just like mercenary. We did that on my last podcast. I went down to different things. Historically, this is the definition. A person engaging in unauthorized warfare against a foreign country. That's pretty clear and concise. Now, how do you get that into the Senate? I don't know. In the Congress. I don't know. You figure it out. See how the fuckery's afoot. Now, I'm going to get into the meat and potatoes of why I am here. Why I'm trying to kickstart a required conversation. And it was done. Look, I was one of those guys that wanted to do such a hit job on Joe Rogan's little podcast. Well, not little. It's bigger than mine. But the way he handled this, it made it a little podcast. I really was incensed over it, where he gave the founder of Twitter a total and complete pass, Jack Dorsey, for all of the fuckery that Twitter has done. But see, I also did a show on the fuckery afoot. I believe it was my last show I did on social media. And the interesting point was, it took because Joe's not going to have a right-wing guy on. It's just not really what he does. He'll have somebody like edgy slightly, but probably not really edgy. He'll have that kind of person on, but he had Tim Pool on. And Tim, while I may disagree fundamentally with some of the things that he says on certain issues, and it's an intractable difference, okay? So I'm not putting any caveats other than that. They're intractable issues, but I believe they are the reason we have problems in the West. And I can list those problems: the lack of human respect, the amount of people that have no regard for human life, i.e. abortion. I'm not talking when the baby's still not formed. I'm talking about once it's formed and has a heartbeat. Now there needs to be a different discussion, but they always want to loop it into one. That's my first issue. My second issue with him is that euthanasia. You know what? I have a do not resuscitate. We'll have it until the day I die. It's in law. I had it written out, and I carried it in my pocket everywhere I've ever been. If I'm that buggered up, I do not need, and that's my choice. That takes it away from the family. See what I mean? This whole thing about now you can abort after birth, that's an issue. Okay, let's go back to the show that I'm talking about with Tim Pool, Joe Rogan, Vajaja, whatever her name is. I don't care. She's a very high verbal IQ person who's a lawyer, but she has no common sense. And then Jack Dorsey, who, in my opinion, he reminds me of a lot of people I grew up with. And, I grew up in a trailer park. So that's my 2 cents on him. I don't care how much money or how intelligent he is. He's an idiot in my book. Anyways, when Joe did it, he gave a total pass. Tim Pool actually was calling him out and calling her out on their doublespeak. We now have seen 1984 come to life. The Stasi would be fucking proud. I've said that numerous times. You have no reason why to know why I say this, but I'm telling you, the little JRE clips that I've seen, Tim Pool calls out media bias in social media, right? No, it's not media bias because of liberal media bias. It's far left communist, cultural Marxist bias. I think Tim does admit that there's people further to the left of him. This has all been pointed out. So there we go. That's my 2 cents on that show, and I'll tell you why. Because it took a liberal, a classical liberal, and like I said, don't think I agree with Tim on everything. It's just like when I had Adam Kokesh on. You think I agreed with him on everything? No, but, I wanted to hear other people's, and people typed in questions, and I asked them to him. And I didn't say all the words the guy was typing, but it was still a good, entertaining conversation. So, why has podcasting become a thing, or YouTubing, whatever you want to call this, a cluster of electrons on your screen? Why has this become a hot button issue to have somebody from the far right or the far left on? Well, it's because everybody's divided into tribes, which I don't think is necessarily bad. So do not put that mix in your punch bowl. Now, with that being said, we're about to go down a train of thought that a lot of people aren't putting together. And I will. The NSA collection data, a couple days back, they said they've stopped it. Okay? Well, remember, I worked for the federal government. If they stop a program, they've already got another one in place that they can plausibly deny and say, nothing's happening here. Nothing to see. Move along, folks. So I'm always dubious when they say, well, we've stopped it. Look, they lied to you about metadata, and they also didn't even tell you what metadata was. It's where you're located if you're on your little cell phone or computer, your IP address, what cell phone towers you're pinging off of. It was total and complete surveillance. You think they still don't have that in Utah, Bluffton, Utah? I think you better think again. You think they destroyed everything they collected? Hell no. It was the first time under Obama that, and Obama did this, don't put this on Bush. Bush did it. NSA's purview is to spy on the outside. All in SIGINT, signal intelligence, satellite intelligence, all that stuff will filter through there. But it was outside, just like the CIA, quote unquote, official purview is outside the U.S. They're not allowed legally to work inside the U.S., which we now found they did do. So they just use cutouts. I'm not going to get into that. That's the whole Trump thing, so we're not going to go there. But what I will say is it took Mike Rogers, who was the head of the CIA, to out the internal spying of Trump through NSA being laundered. Of course, they had a FISA court thing. See, here's another thing. They're not talking about the parallel construction. There had to be parallel construction, and I'm going to tell you why. Parallel construction is when intel comes in, and now you have to make a case, which is illegal, by the way. Illegal under U.S. law. But to bypass that, what they'll do is somebody will make a report of this, that, and the other. And they'll upline it. Well, they use State Department to do that. And, yep. You just got to look at Menwith Hill in the UK. Joint U.S. NSA UK GCHQ's data collection SIGINT facility. And it is. It's Seven Eyes, Baz. You know this, brother. Anyways, don't want to get dropped into the minutia. I want to keep this flowing, but Baz just gave, and Baz, by the way, him and I will be doing a show soon. Great guy, hell fellow, well met, fellow PHU member. PHU is Pipe Hitters Union. It's kind of an inside thing. Anyways, so here's the deal. You're seeing all this fuckery afoot. And they've tried to do parallel construction, and I've just showed you how they did it in a different way. But you've still never seen a paragraph 1. How did the investigation by the FBI start? They've changed it like 5 times. Where's the real paragraph 1? You haven't seen it. I was a federal cop after I worked for my first agency in the federal government. And I will tell you, you still have not seen the paragraph 1. That's how every investigation starts. People who've gone to FLETC. People who've gone through DEA school. I'm not going to divulge where that's at. It's in a couple places. People who've gone through FLETC is Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. There's 2 of them in America. People who have gone through the FBI Academy in Quantico. Everybody knows where that is. They all know this shit. I'm not telling you anything that's not disclosed. What I will say now, and I'm being very frank and honest with you, you've seen a perversion of federal law enforcement because of intelligence. It's not, you can't separate the two. You cannot separate the two at this point. Mike Rogers was a whistleblower. Here you have Edward Snowden, who had to, and look, I'm not just, I will tell you what I disagree with on, just to make sure we're clear with Edward Snowden. I disagreed because I've blown the whistle on several things. Did I run away from the U.S.? No. If somebody had a problem with them, with what I said, they can come arrest me. It's not a big deal. I take ownership. What Snowden did was righteous when he let the American people know what I've been telling people for years, but I'm a kook, right? Years I've been saying this. And this, we're talking about when Carnivore was operational, several other things that I knew of. Now this stuff's out, so I can talk about it. I told people, don't carry a cell phone. Don't do this. Don't do that. And they just say, well, why? Oh, you're paranoid. No, I'm just saying don't do it. Still use your phone. I still have a flippin' social media thing. But, and this is proof on YouTube. But what I didn't do are certain things. You have to educate yourself, and you never put your real stuff out there. I do, but I also know how to spin it so that they think I'm a, you know, whatever. I like to keep it funky, y'all. But it's real. So he exposed that. And this is where the two join together. Now the government has decided, and remember, I've done a show on that, Facebook. It was funded by the CIA. And Gilman Louis, DARPANet, also with Peter, he's a homosexual, he's a billionaire, Peter Tues. Anyways, all this stuff, that's where the funding came for, the seed money for Facebook. It's data mining. You think, here's how the government did it. They said, we're going to bypass the Constitution. The First Amendment doesn't apply to private companies. Why do you think you're seeing the Congress so resistant to making them regulated as a public utility? Once they do that, now they fall under constitutional laws. You think any white nationalist or black nationalist like Louis Farrakhan, or do you think anybody in La Raza, you think any of them have their telephones shut off? Hell fucking no, and I'll tell you why. Because they're public utilities and it falls under the First Amendment. They can still spy on it, but I'm telling you a real deal fact. That's why they do it. That's why they're putting it out there. Him calling out Twitter, and he said social media. He said it numerous times. How plots, Alex Jones, whether you like him or hate him, the fact remains. Alex Jones was a burr in the saddle of the globalist. I don't have to say who the globalists are. Everybody knows who they are. And I loved how certain people always push that they want you to say it. You don't do that. You just don't, because then you feed them. They'll say you dog whistle, whatever. Let them believe you're dog whistling. It doesn't matter what other people think. That's my opinion. What I mean is that there are people out there that want to know everything about everybody. So guess what? I said this in another podcast. I love now I have this nice body of work you guys can look up. How, when I went into the Army, somebody drinking and driving, I'd give them a ride home, man. Not a problem. Then all of a sudden, hey, you can't just give them rides now. We got to have paper on everybody. Why? Well, so if they get in trouble doing something else, it's not a first offense. Really? Marine Corps was the same way when I went into it. It was awesome when I first got in. By 91, actually it was 91. No, it shifted. Did the same fucking thing. And I believe the show I did was about getting rid of somebody's able to be discriminating as to what kind of crime it is. Did anybody get hurt? If there's no hurt, it's not a crime. Well, they took that away, right? Somebody drinking and driving. Yeah, he swerved. Okay, man, he swerved. I see he's impaired, so I can stop any problem with him, and I can take him home. And I can tell him, if your car moves, I don't care if your brother moves it. It better be here by my end of shift, because if it leaves before then, I'll come in and apprehend you. Instead of arrest, the military used the term apprehend. So, still the same thing. Arrest, detention, apprehension. They all mean the same thing legally in USC and also in every state court. It matters not. But the terminology just differs. So, I've gone through a lot of stuff, but you see that the lawyer and Jack, when they came on that program with Tim Pool, they didn't realize, I'm sure he introduced himself as a liberal and this, that, and the other. They didn't realize he would call them out on their bullshit. And as much as I may differ with Tim Pool, the one thing I can say about that gentleman, I'd love to interview him, but he'd probably never come on my small show. The one thing I really respect about that gentleman is he calls bullshit on bullshit. And it doesn't matter left or right. And sometimes I agree, sometimes I disagree. But the fact remains, he's the one who mentioned Alex Jones. He's the one who mentioned Gavin McInnes. He's the one who mentioned Milo Yiannopoulos. Joe didn't. So, you know, these are problematic. And he also was the one who called him out. You're not deleting left-wing sites like Antifa, or in England, hate not hope, or hope not hate, which I call it hate not hope because they hate everybody that they don't think hopes for this beautiful paradigm of multiculturalism, which is so crazy because there's so many people from England who I've worked with that were black, white, Islamic, Pakistani guys, and they've all been good dudes that I've worked with. I've been very fortunate in my career, besides a few little minor incidents, and they're not worth mentioning. Most of the dudes I've run into have been stellar dudes, you know, and the ones that weren't, well, they went by the wayside, and they are who they are, and they did what they did. I'm not going to, you've never heard me sling shit on anybody, and I didn't do it with Joe Rogan, and I was so tempted to, but I was just like, I'll give him a chance, you know. I just don't want to get involved in the stupid-ass drama. What I do want to get involved in is pointing out and saying, this man has his finger on the pulse, and he's doing the right thing. And with that, I will leave it at this. I disagree with Edward Snowden for leaving. I totally agree with Edward Snowden about releasing the information. With Tim Pool, I have agreements on some of the social issues. They're minor. Same thing with Edward Snowden. To me, him leaving, it's a big deal, but it's still minor. But Tim Pool calling out social media, that's stellar. So I'm not going to shit on him. And if you guys think I would, well, I apologize that you think I would. But I always try to be practical and honest. Now, the beginning of the show, I played Axion Ghost, It's Game Time. Please go to his YouTube channel. His music's really good. You're going to like it. And that's always going to be my intro from now on. And I always use Axion Ghost Inside Enemy Headquarters as my outro. Please go there. Links are in the description. So if you don't know where it is, the links are there. If you're interested in my thoughts on news, you'll find me on WPRPN, World Pirate Radio Podcast Network with Jaffe Ryder. And also we have Princess Wells on with us. She gives a whole different opinion, a female perspective. That's fine, and it's good. It's a good show. All of us have differences, but guess what? It's okay. We can agree to disagree. That's the point. That's the point of my show, too. Let's start the debate, folks. You know, I'm glad you all sat down on my big orange couch, poured yourself a nice cup of coffee or a nice hot tea, or maybe an iced tea if you're somewhere where it's warm, like in Australia. There's enough room on that big orange couch that we can all have a nice, beautiful talk, and even some adult libation sometimes. With that being said, I'm going to tell you all, I'm going to go head into inside enemy headquarters, go look around again. And that being said, shuff out.